Hi, Cheryl.
That's some money. Look. Up here.
Here.
Sorry. We're on Zoom now.
Let's see, we got to be careful now. Somebody from Oregon is checking in.
Uh-oh. Watch what you say.
That's right.
Be nice.
That's right.
No cracks.
Let's see here. I see Carol. Let's see. Do I see Carol? No.
There's
Carol Namiro, are you there? Let's see here.
You have to call the roll.
Let's see if I can get her to unmute. Hi, Carol, are you there?
I think I'm not muted anymore.
Right.
This
So
is
now
Artist.
let me see if I can get your camera working. Let me give you a button to click to turn on your video.
Yeah.
Let's see
Says I'm waiting.
here. So are we.
I can see you very well. You can't see me?
No, just a blank screen. So you've either got all the lights turned out in your room, or we don't have your. Well, actually, it says that your video is activated. That's weird.
Father Ken, I think that's Reverend Artist talking to you, asking you if you can see her,
Oh,
not Carol.
oh,
Yeah. So yeah, Reverend Artist, we can
That's
see you.
Reverend Artist. Thank you. I can see you too.
yeah.
I can see
I
you.
was answering the wrong person. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I've got this, Mom.
Let's see here if I can get.
Ding on me if you need me, okay?
Can you see me now?
We do see you. So, okay, Carol's going to try again. There we go, Carol. There you are.
Yeah, there she is.
Oh, good.
Very, very good. Let's see if I still have. Okay. I need to make sure I have. Okay, I do have breakout rooms. I needed to make sure. I was going to try to use breakout rooms tonight. Let's see here who I do not have checked in.
Oh, there's Moses.
Yeah, you heard Moses.
I'm here.
Okay, maybe I better change to my headphones so you don't get the background noise.
Oh.
Try this.
That was probably the best one I ever did. I'm gonna get my mat.
There we go. Let's see if that's a little quieter for you.
Hi,
Hi, Cindy.
it was a long night last night.
You had a long night?
My dog, labs eat everything, right?
Oh, yes.
So around 3:30 in the morning, her belly started rumbling
Uh-oh.
before I could get out there and let her out of the crate. Oh my gosh, it was awful.
Okay, I was worried you're going to tell me it was gastric torsion. Okay.
No,
Okay.
we're not sure what she,
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Okay, she probably just ate something that nobody wants to hear what it was.
Or the result.
Yeah, or the result.
We've used our imagination. Oh, there.
Exactly. Well, great. Let's see. So I don't see Alice, but I think she was going to have conflicts this evening anyways. And Trish, Anita, Celia, Carol McGill, and Roz. Okay, well, we'll see if they join us later. I'd like to go ahead and start, and I want to share a screen here for a psalm that I'd like us to read. And let's see if someone would be willing to read the leaders part, which is the part that is in red. And then we can all respond with what's in blue. So would somebody volunteer to be the leader?
I can lead.
Was that D?
That was me.
Okay, D. Yeah, if you would, and then we'll all do the all part.
To you, O Lord, I lift up my soul.
Oh my God, in you I trust. Do not let me be put to shame. Do not let my enemies exult over me.
Do not let those who wait for you be put to shame. Let them be ashamed who are wantonly treacherous.
Make me to know your ways, O Lord. Teach me your paths.
Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are the God of my salvation. For you I wait all day long.
Be mindful of your mercy, O Lord, and of your steadfast love, for they have been from of old.
Do not remember the sins of my youth or my transgressions.
According to your steadfast love, remember me for your goodness' sake, O Lord. Amen. All right. So let me get.
Can you
Amen,
see
amen.
that in the middle of my, Father Ken, can you see that in the middle of my screen, there's a little thing that says waiting?
No,
It's right on Carol's. Okay,
on Carol's screen or on your screen? On your.
on my screen, now it's on your forehead. It's a little black box and it says waiting.
Huh. Yeah, I'm not, we're not.
Well,
seeing
never
that.
mind, I can see the rest of you.
Carol, there's nothing on your forehead. Just so you know.
Well, that's good. No flies.
Oh yeah, flies, right? That made the news, didn't it? No kidding. No kidding. That was crazy. Let's see here. Let me make sure I get this in the right order. I'm gonna do a bunch of screen sharing here today because there are some great photos for us to talk about. This is a drawing. Let me see if I can get it bigger here. By Peter Lassman. And this is, can you see what's happening here?
Yes.
Okay. So there's really a symbolism in this drawing about how Jonah really differs from other scriptures we've probably read. It just has a very different message and delivered in a weird way. Is Jonah a prophet?
Very
Yes.
reluctant one.
A very reluctant one.
Yeah.
I don't think he'd ever admit to it.
Yeah, he wouldn't admit that he's reluctant.
That he's a prophet.
Oh, that he's a prophet at all. Yeah. Well, that's a good point. You know, I end up having a little background from Carol Miller, the author of this course, that she gives to the leaders. And there's just a few sentences here I want to read to you because it really touches on this studying that we're doing of these first two chapters tonight of Jonah. It says that Jonah's lack of awe and respect for God is apparently the way the author of Jonah views the Israelites and their leaders. Because throughout this short story, Jonah is a stand-in for Israel and its leaders, and most likely after their return from exile. So the author is really trying to send a message about this sense that we touched on last week about all of Israel being in very much an isolationist mood. Like, if you're not an Israelite, we don't want you near us. We want you to go away. Even if you're married to us, go back home. We don't want you around. I mean, it was really like over the top. And so this author of Jonah was really sharing a perspective about not just Jonah, but Jonah was representing the personality of Israel at the time. Let me read just a couple of other things I highlighted out of this 4 pages or so that Carol Miller wrote up. Jonah spends a lot of time in and near the water. It is not only that he's having a rough time with the elements, however, we might conclude that Jonah's life is in chaos. He appears to be angry and frustrated and out of sync with his neighbors, some of whom he would like to see dead, and with his God, whom he thinks is not doing the job properly, and with himself, for he refuses to stand back to look at himself as God sees him. Jonah seems to see his beliefs as infallible. This book is challenging us to look inside ourselves and our communities to find the chaos, the unresolved anger, the fear, the confusion, and the desire for revenge that is there. Okay, so let me stop sharing for a minute. You know, I've preached on this a couple of times, that, you know, not all biblical scholars are in agreement with this idea, but I think it's core to this book of Jonah, and it's definitely core to how Carol Miller interprets this book, that when you read the first 2 or 3 verses of Genesis, I've described before, there are a couple ways you can really understand it as Bible scholars have looked at it, and that is that it's telling about this thing called creation ex profundo, you know, out of the depths, or ex nihilo, meaning out of nothing. And the concept of it being out of the depths is really communicating out of chaos. It's not out of nothing. It's God putting order to chaos, and God replacing chaos with God's love and grace and will. And I think the context that I shared it in a sermon once is saying that, you know, I really can't handle in my personal faith journey. There are plenty of people who do in their faith journey, but I can't handle a black and white sense of God's will. It just seems like God is always working in the shades of gray. And the more we try to figure God out, the more God's gonna sneak around the corner and have another way of solving what we're trying to solve, just to prove God's God and I'm not. And so there is this sense that in my understanding of looking at life, that I can't say that everything bad is from Satan and everything that's good is from God. And anytime something bad happens, either God's mad at me or Satan's attacking me. Those are the only two options. I don't agree with that. I think I agree those two things are both possible, but I also think that there are outbursts of chaos. Just look around. Just listen to the evening news. Just listen to the debates. There is chaos, and part of what's happening in this book of Jonah, if we look at this bigger picture, boy, this is just such a mind-blowing kind of thing to me, to open this book up to say, if this isn't just a story about a guy named Jonah, but if this is really a book that is critiquing the mindset of Israel and saying, you know what, you are trying to yourselves regulate chaos, but God's the only one who can put order to the chaos. And the more you try, what you're doing is trying to steer God's boat. And you're not working in the flow of God's grace. You're actually working cross stream to the flow of God's grace. And that's what Jonah was doing. And you can see from that last picture, he got spit back out right where he started from. So after all the work he did to get away from this, because he knew better, he could solve this better than God could. And he could do it faster and in a much more proper way. Just kill everybody who doesn't agree with him. Hey, if Nineveh is the capital of Assyria, and Assyria is this horrible, ruthless place that comes in and devastates anybody they conquer, well, God, just kill them off. So this book, and especially these first couple chapters, and what we're going to talk about tonight, is really investigating, is that really what God wants? And I think it also opens up for you and me a thought process about this issue of the role of chaos and the tendency we have when we see chaos. I mean, certainly I, as an engineer, if I see chaos, I want to put order to it. But if God is really the ultimate authority, do I do this in a way that works in conjunction with God's will and the way God does things? Or am I trying to do it on my own? Jonah was trying to do it on his own, wasn't he? He was just trying to convince God, well, just kill everybody and that'll solve the problem. Okay, well, enough of my sermon here, but I just think that picture tells us a lot. And oh, there's one more picture to share that's along the same lines here. Okay, so what do you see happening in this picture here? Let me get it away from the pictures of us. Can you see the boat?
Really?
Can you see the fish?
Oh, yes, of course.
Can you see Jonah?
Yes.
And what are the people on the boat doing with Jonah?
Pushing him out.
Helping him out.
Yeah, he's they're going to see if he can walk on water, right? So we end up seeing several cases where Jonah is in need of mercy and forgiveness. What are other times besides this? I mean, this is clearly one where he really needs some of God's mercy right now. What are other times you can think of in this first couple of chapters with what happened in this book?
Well, when he's inside the fish.
For sure. I mean, he was actually trying to, without saying a word, without bargaining with God, like a lot of the prophets did, right? They'd say, well, why don't you send somebody else? And there'd be a discussion. Not Jonah. He just headed in the other direction. So there really was a need for forgiveness there, for God to not just say, I smite you for messing with your God. He didn't do that, did he? God didn't do that. So there was forgiveness. Do you think Jonah recognized forgiveness there?
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, maybe,
Not-
maybe not.
Maybe not at the time.
Yeah, probably not. It's probably one of those things you had to look back a year or two later, right, and say,
Yeah.
"Wow, I'm fortunate that God was lenient to let me ignore him and and go to Tarshish rather than to Nineveh."
There's
Yep.
people either
And-
trying to save him or to push him in. I mean, there's one person who's holding him in, and was he trying to get out of the boat and they were trying to stop him from getting out of the boat?
Well, when you read the story, the answer is both, isn't it? So isn't that interesting? So let's think about this again. If Jonah is representing all of Israel in his, disdain for anything not Jewish, these people on the boat, were they Jews?
Oh,
Okay, none of them were. Did they feel any sense of God's presence?
Well, they were working hard at something.
It seems like they were guided, but at least in the Bible, maybe that's what the translators did to us. But every time they talk about God, it's God with a little g, not with a big G. It's like, oh, that's your God. But clearly your God is really ticked off at you. So some people, at first they tried to handle the storm without hurting Jonah, right? So they were actually trying to protect him.
mhm.
And so here, if we're looking at Israel, this is saying that there are people who are not Jews, who are not trying to do harm to Israel. And did God save the people on the boat?
Yes.
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 Okay. So it's not like in order for God to prove his point, the whole crew went in the drink. Jonah went in the drink. So this is really sounding more like a judgment against Israel. Okay. So a way that we can explore this a little more deeply, let me see here, a new share. So somewhere here, there is here it is. This is the worksheet that I emailed out to you that had 4 pages to it. And I don't know if you had a chance to look it over or not. There was no need. This wasn't a homework assignment, but I would want to make sure that you have a chance to read some of these.
I'm feeling.
Let me try to enlarge it here so it takes up more of the screen. Is it readable yet to you, or is it too little? Is that doing better? Let me try to enlarge it.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. Let's see if, well, I can't see everybody. You're hidden you're hidden underneath this screen here. But if I could have, well, Dee, you already started reading. Could you just read not the authors, but just the first 4 of these statements about chaos?
Yeah. I accept chaos. I'm not sure whether it accepts me. Out of chaos, God made a world, and out of high passions comes a people. Hold on. You guys are covering it. I gotta move you. There we go.
Oh, let me move it up.
Okay,
Does that help?
there we go.
Or
Yeah.
can I move it over? Does that help?
I moved you guys so I can see it now. Everybody's a mad scientist and life is their lab. We're all trying to experiment to find a way to live, to solve problems, to fend off madness and chaos. And chaos in the midst of chaos isn't funny, but chaos in the midst of order is.
Okay, would someone else read the next, let's see, let me scroll this up. And if somebody would be willing to read the next 4.
Can't see over here.
Who got volunteered?
Well, I can't see the ending of the sentences.
Oh, you can't?
No,
Okay, so something covering it up on the right, are you saying?
yeah, faces.
You can click on it and move it over and it'll, okay, that's better.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah,
The battlefield is a scene of constant chaos. The winner will be one who controls the chaos, both his own and the enemy's. Any change is resistant because bureaucrats have a vested interest in chaos in which they exist.
Richard Nixon.
Yeah.
I'm
Art,
sorry.
that's okay. Art in itself is an attempt to bring order out of chaos. Horror fiction shows us that the control we believe we have is purely illusionary, and that every moment we teeter on chaos and oblivion.
Okay,
That's kind of scary. Stop blaming outside circumstances for your inside chaos. That's another one. Chaos is freedom, in fact, total freedom, but no meaning. The ocean pulsed outside our window. The waves, sound of the waves crashing on the rocks below usually calmed me down. But the fear and the chaos that were tangled in my mind that made it impossible. Shakespeare. But when the world is indeed in chaos, then the affirmation of chaos becomes essential. Are we in the world of chaos now?
okay. Well, that's not out of the Bible. That's out of military leaders and out of political leaders and out of fiction writers and out of artists and all sorts of walks of life, isn't it? That they're talking about this, not only the existence of chaos, but what role it plays in our lives. What do you think might be the source of Jonah's chaos or of the Israelites' chaos?
His own belief that he doesn't have to follow anybody but himself. So he's in turmoil all the time trying to avoid the truth.
Okay, so it's ranking himself higher than God. Is that what you're saying, or?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it seems like there's also a self-righteous element of this, isn't it? That being the people of God means God's for me and not for anybody else.
Exactly.
What do you think it does mean for Jews to be the people of God?
It's a hard one.
They believe it.
Well, does that mean well, Christ said that we are his brothers and sisters and we are children of God. So how do you square away Jews being people of God and us being children of God?
I would hope that it would be the same.
We all come from
At all.
one source.
The role of the people of God was to model what it meant to be a theocracy and to believe in one God, not a whole family of gods, but one God. And their job was to provide that example to the nations so they understand what that life would be like. And then I think we are told by Jesus, or well, we're told by Paul, live into the image of Christ. Well, I think of the woman at the well, the Samaritan well. Jesus was really ministering to everyone, right? Not just Jews. He in fact, that one parable where, remember, a woman said, at least a dog gets to eat the crumbs under the table. That I just love that one, because Jesus said, okay, your child is well, and healing was accomplished, because Jesus really realized, I think the human Jesus realized the full role of the divine Jesus, that he's here for everybody. And the people of God really had a role to be people to serve as examples for us. Was Jonah the kind of example that God was looking for? I don't think so, right?
Well, he
So-
didn't give up on him. He must have seen some potential there somewhere.
Oh, I like that. That's encouraging for me. Yeah, that's a good point.
Mhm.
Very good point. Well, we have another handout. Let me put it up here so I can show it to you, and see where I put it. Worksheets. Okay. So this was the next couple of sheets. Does God care about them? And this lets us really explore this issue that I just brought up for conversation with you. And let me read this part A with you. In the book of Jonah, those who are not of Jonah's faith appear to be more kind and more concerned with God than Jonah does. But Jonah is supposed to represent the faith of the Israelites, the writers of the Hebrew Bible. All the others are what Jonah would call pagans, or those who worship gods who are not the true God. So the question is, what is the relationship between God and people who do not profess our faith? That's a big question, isn't it? That's a good question. So what we have here is some questions that, if you all had copies of this, I was going to suggest we break out into some breakout rooms, but does everybody have a copy of this?
No.
No?
No.
Okay, then I don't want to do that. I was going to do it in groups of 3 or 4, so that if some of you had it, you could share it with everybody else. But if we look at Jonah, let's see, 8 through 16. Let's see if we could do it this way instead of breakout rooms. Then, if you can open up your Bibles to Jonah, and if somebody would be willing to read those first 8 verses, or I mean 8 through 16 of chapter 1. Can somebody find that and read it?
Okay.
Somebody said they could. Was that you, Cheryl?
Oh, it was me. I can do that.
Could you? That'd be great if you would, please.
Sure. Then they said unto him, Tell us, we pray thee, for whose cause this evil is upon us? What is thine occupation? And whence comest thou? What is thy country? And of what people art thou? And he said unto them, I am a Hebrew, and I fear the Lord, the God of heaven, which hath made the sea and the dry land. Then were the men exceedingly afraid, and said unto him, Why hast thou done this? For the men knew that he fled from the presence of the Lord, because he had told them. Then said they unto him, What shall we do unto thee, that the sea may be calm unto us? For the sea wrought and was tempestuous. And he said unto them, Take me up, and cast me forth into the sea, so shall the sea become calm unto you. For I know that for my sake this great tempest is upon you. Nevertheless, the men rowed hard to bring it to the land, but they could not, for the sea wrought and was tempestuous against them. Wherefore they cried unto the Lord and said, We beseech thee, O Lord, we beseech thee. Let us not perish for this man's life, and lay not upon us innocent blood. For thou, O Lord, hast done as it pleased thee. So they took up Jonah and cast him forth into the sea, and the sea ceased from her ravaging. Then the men feared the Lord exceedingly, and offered a sacrifice unto the Lord, and made vows.
You did an awesome job with King James. I am so I am so impressed. Thank you.
It's the only one we have here.
So does it seem to you like God was concerned about the lives of the sailors?
Yeah,
Not so much.
So
he certainly is, but
he saved their lives,
Yeah.
at least, right? They didn't go down with the ship. What happened in verse 16 with the sailors? If I could impose NIV in here. At this, the men greatly feared the Lord, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows to him. So they actually, as this note 1 says here of what I've got shared on the screen, they were converted, weren't they?
Yeah.
They really realized that is the true God. But it took them being saved from the sea before they figured that out.
Can I
God-
just add something to this?
Yes.
Just real quick. So, I mean, I feel like Jonah kind of gets a bad rap, but he becomes very brave and is willing to sacrifice himself to save everybody on the ship.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
so, I mean, even if he thinks that he's better because he's, from Israel and they're not, he's still willing to sacrifice himself to save them, all of them.
Yeah, very good point. So he accepted the fact that he was responsible for what was happening, and didn't want that to cause the whole crew to lose their lives because he was being a jerk.
Yeah. And in a way, that kind of showed that he did have faith in God, even though he was running away from him.
Yeah.
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 Because he acknowledged the power of God, and so maybe sacrificing himself, as he thought, would I don't know if he thought this through, but would save the crew of the ship.
So he sort of had a different sense of value of the non-Jew, didn't he? I mean, that incident really changed for him whether anybody who was not Jewish had any value. Because before, when it was about Nineveh, he could care less about them. He just wanted them to go away. So God ended up really intervening here, and really, as we know, ended up saving Jonah's life as well. So there was mercy, even when Jonah didn't seem to like. He was offended by God's mercy, I guess is a way to say it. Right? It bothered him that God was showing mercy on somebody who was not Jewish.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, when you think about it, do you remember, I mean, Assyria was really a ruthless army that when they did defeat Israel, I mean, they really leveled the place. And so you could see where it would be a pretty hard place for a devout Jew to feel comfortable about having nice feelings towards these people. If we look at, I wanted to scroll down here too. I'm skipping some of the questions so that we can fit this into our hour or so time slot. Psalm 145 verses 8 and 9. If someone could find that in your Bible, I'd love to have that read for all of us. Psalm 145. And that's verses 8 and 9. Anybody find that?
Okay. You can volunteer.
I hear Tina's voice.
I can read it. I can volunteer.
Dave's got it.
Oh, Tina just volunteered Dave. Okay.
What a wife for.
She let him downstairs.
Yeah, are you in the same room or is this all by Zoom? Dave, yeah, could you read those two verses, please?
The Lord is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love. The Lord is good to all, and his compassion is over all that he has made.
Okay, so to whom does the word all apply?
Everybody.
I would say all animals and all plants.
And people.
All that God has made, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is a pretty radically all-inclusive statement. Okay, let's take a look now at Isaiah in the Old Testament, if you could look for that. And I think Isaiah is towards the New Testament from where we just were in Psalms.
Which Isaiah?
What's that?
What chapter and verse? I don't see.
Oh, I'm sorry, Isaiah. Oh yeah, I didn't, thank you. Let me find my cursor so I can scroll. Sorry, I don't want to do Matthew. I'm going to skip that. You can read Matthew later if you'd like to, if you want to jot down that notation, because there's the same. Oh, I did email this out to you, so you also have it in that document. But these two passages are handling exactly the same issue. Matthew in the Gospels, and then Isaiah. So it's Isaiah chapter 2, verses 2 through 4.
Yeah. Would you like me to read it?
Yes, please.
Okay. In days to come, the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established as the highest of the mountains, and shall be raised above the hills. All the nations shall stream to it. Many people shall come and say, come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways, and that we may walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth instruction, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. He shall judge between the nations, and shall arbitrate for many peoples. They shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore.
Okay. So if we look at the word in verse 2 for nation, it's saying all nations is referring to all those who are not part of Israel, right? So this whole passage is about God's reign over all and where that's going to lead us. And so this middle question, I've lost my cursor, so I don't know how to highlight this, but what does this say about God's care and God's concern for outsiders?
All conclusive. It's all
All inclusive.
inclusive.
Yeah.
Well, does
It
God
seems that
even
way.
see outsiders?
Well,
I mean,
God,
are there outsiders in God's opinion? Does he even see outsiders? Isn't everybody,
Yeah.
you know?
well,
him?
it seems he does.
outsider.
It seems he does, because what this passage is saying is that he's going to teach us his ways. He's going to, so that we can walk in those paths, that he's going to judge between nations and settle disputes. I mean, how, I guess that leads to this last sentence. How is this going to happen according to the Isaiah text? So how does this care and concern of outsiders look? What characteristics does it display? It seems like verse 4 is what defines that. No more swords, no more spears.
There'll be peace.
That's the word that kept echoing to me too, that it is about this pervasive peace that is what God wants to establish. Okay, so let me get out of this share mode thing so we can see each other.
Does that have any reverberation with the idea that there is no peace if there is no justice?
Well, it seems, I mean, that's one level of it, I guess, but it seems to me there's a higher level of our seeing, as in my role as a pastor. And Tina, I'm sure you've been in the midst of this. In fact, all of us in different levels, I think, are in it, that we end up seeing disputes within families that are over the dumbest things. And we see sometimes that there are issues that get so big that it looks like the family is just going to completely break apart. And part of what I have counseled over the years is saying, when we look at abortion, when we look at gay rights, when we look at different ethnic groups and whether they're being treated fairly or not, is this based upon situational ethics? Is this based on how things are going on in the moment? Is this based on and what the rules of the land are? Or is there a higher calling, a higher set of values, a higher priority that we as Christians are supposed to live by that really is above all that? And so we should be able to talk to each other, even if we disagree, we can put limits on thinking if I disagree with you, it means I must eliminate you. And boy, that's the mood I'm seeing in this country now. And it just tears my heart to see that, because there should really be, I think, a sense of what, is being communicated in this passage from Isaiah. And the same thing is from this Matthew 25, that other passage that's in the handout I sent you. It's really, really saying there is a higher priority that should filter down to affect all these other things. And the higher priority is, do I believe in the infinite love of God? Do I believe in God's mercy, even when I don't think I see it, that it's there? Jonah didn't see God's mercy in the moment. He just felt like he was being bounced around because he was not being a dutiful prophet. But in reality, what happened was he ended up seeing the power of God working to keep him, get him back on track, save Nineveh. Nobody got killed. No city got decimated. And there ended up being a whole new people and a shipload of sailors, by the way, who ended up worshiping God. And so, so I think the worshiping of God part needs to be part of it. It's not just about what is social justice. Do we end up, having a sense that that solves it all? It seems like there's a higher issue of, us being models, just like Israel is supposed to be models of, how do we actually live this out so that if a law is unjust, how do we address that in a way that reflects God's values? I mean, that doesn't mean all laws are just. I mean,
because one of the things I've been thinking when I read in the first part of our lessons for today was the fact that the other prophets stayed, and if they didn't agree with God and they didn't want to go or whatever, they had a conversation. Yes. And they worked things out till they saw the light and realized that they needed to do what God was telling them to do. And Jonah didn't talk. Jonah just ran away. And the problem only got worse because he ran away, because he didn't stay and wrestle, or even, sometimes we're not happy we don't think God is doing the right thing, and we're not happy with what he's doing, but we need to stay and talk about it. Just like if somebody hurts our feelings or does something that we don't think is the right thing, we need to find that way to have a conversation about it so we can work things through.
We do, but boy, isn't that hard work? That's hard to do.
And it takes people to believe in the examples that we have in the Bible and in the saints of confronting and finding a way to work things through, as opposed to going off with hurt feelings and talking to somebody else and letting the problem get bigger instead of trying to heal the hurt.
Yeah.
Or the disagreement, or whatever it happens to be.
Makes me think about the quote from St. Francis. He said, "Preach the gospel at all times, using words when necessary."
Yeah.
Yeah. Because sometimes I think words make it sound like we're preaching.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to share a mindset or a worldview, or how whatever is the right way to phrase that. So we're looking for a time that there would be peace, so that nobody needs spears, nobody needs swords, nobody needs guns, nobody needs Molotov cocktails. And it sounds like it involves, if we look at Jonah as an example, one of the things that it seems to me that he needed to do is get a sense of humility, that being one of the people of God, almost meant that he felt that he was better than anybody else rather than having a responsibility. Somehow God help him to be a representative of God in flesh and blood in real situations. Hmm. Boy, does that sound like the evening news?
I was just thinking that sounds like, sometimes we see on the news how these Christian groups talk about how, their way is the right way. And if you don't think their way, if you don't think like they do, then you're going to go to hell and you're bad. And then we all get lumped into those groups.
Yeah.
And so then everybody, you tell somebody you're a Christian, they're like, oh, so you think this and you think that. It's like, no, that's not what I think. And we just get lumped in because that's what they see. They take those extremist groups and that's what they show.
Thanks,
Well,
guys.
I agree.
Watch out, doggy.
That doesn't mean that we water down our faith in order to not offend anybody. So, that's the balancing act in this, right? Because it's not saying like, I need to water down what I understand are the values we're supposed to live by so that I don't offend anybody. Jesus didn't water it down. But what he did was to share it at the same time that he was honoring where the other people were coming from. And it seems like God was even honoring where Nineveh was coming from. God changed his mind, right? God didn't level the place, and ended up finding a way to have everybody, become part of our theology of God being the one God. But to say that means everybody else is the enemy, I think that's where the danger is. I think instead it's a case of our being examples of, how do I handle family disputes? How do I handle disagreements with a law that I think is unjust? How do I handle voting for one of these two people running for president when it's not about honest. I mean, I've only been around for 74 years, but I truly believe that whoever wins and whoever loses, the world will still exist. America will still be here. I'm concerned about how much work it's going to be to get it so that people really honor each other again, because I've seen damage to that really does concern me. But we're part of the group of people, I think, who have a responsibility to help somehow show that honoring of each other. There's a pretty cool, we're about at the one hour mark. They had as a closing prayer, instead of a closing prayer, to play the music. And I found a place that actually had the lyrics along with the music for the Navy hymn.
Oh.
And the title of it is Eternal Father, Strong to Save. Any of you familiar with that?
Oh, yes.
Well, I ended up finding a place. We'll see if I have any luck actually sharing it on the screen, but I'd like to just share this because the first verse refers to Eternal Father. The second is, O Christ, whose voice the waters heard. The third is Most Holy Spirit, who didst brood upon the chaos, dark and rude. So let me see if I can figure out how to share this. Whoops. Okay, so I've got the video up there. So now I got to see. I know I've done this before. There was a way. Share computer sound. Let's see. I think this is it. This might work. Are you able to see the waves?
Yes.
Okay. And I can see a few faces, so just let me know if you're able to hear this when I hear it? Can you hear the music? Oops, it's still playing over there. Let me stop it. We've heard enough of it. There's another verse
Uh-huh.
about the Trinity.
Mhm.
Well, you know, Israel was an inland country, mostly desert, had a few lakes like the Dead Sea, and they really saw the ocean as chaos.
Mm.
And so there really was a lot of the theology of people in that part of the world about feeling like gods were in control of the sea.
Mhm.
But what Israel was really saying was, our God's in control of everything. And what we need to do is let God take control. And that brings up the point, I think, in this story about Jonah and in the connection that has with you and me, is how much of the chaos is inside us. And how can we really be aware of us allowing that chaos to reign when we know God has control over all chaos, if we allow that. And so I think there's a really important message in there with the chaos of this pandemic, with the chaos of this presidential election, with, you know, just chaos that we all experience in life. There's a fair amount of it that is of human making or being perpetuated because the way we have as humans are acting. And what Jonah really learned in the course of this was that God's ultimately going to end up getting God's way. And we need to remember that God has the power to calm the sea, to bring the fish just at the right time so the fish can spit him back out, to remind him, I told you I wanted you to go to Nineveh. So I think there's a really deep philosophical question you and I can think about as we reflect on these first couple of chapters of this idea of Jonah being a stand-in for the people of Israel and their sense that nobody matters but us. In fact, nobody has value with God except us. And the theme of this story is, oh yeah, that does not seem to be consistent with God's love for all of creation. And that doesn't mean that God doesn't want those who don't know God yet or don't believe in God to be converted, to be redeemed, to receive God's grace, to understand the relationship that God wants to have with us. God does want all those things. It's not like none of that matters. But it is also saying that God is not of a mind to say, I'm going to destroy everybody who doesn't believe in me. And that's what Jonah wanted. And it seems like that's what some human beings would like. If you don't agree with me, I will destroy you. And we see that in other countries and sometimes in this country. I mean, did you see this militant group that was going to kidnap and probably kill the governor of Michigan?
Yes.
Crazy.
Wow. I mean, I just see connections with this story that we're studying here.
Very timely.
Yeah, it just seems that way. So, so just as we wrap this up, we already had sort of the closing prayer with that hymn, but I'd like to hear just some thoughts from any of you who would like to share your sense of if this is a new idea for you, that this is a story about the mindset of Israel to be isolationists, and not only that, but really want to see God go out and wipe out anybody who doesn't think their way. And is that a new perspective to look at this story? Is there any value in looking at what Carol Miller is suggesting that we look at?
No. We all need reminding.
Well, I guess we all also maybe need to be challenged. I mean, isn't this really an invitation for us to really think differently about people we don't understand, or people we don't agree with, or people who even don't believe the same way we do? How do we handle that? So, all right. Well, any parting thoughts before we close for the evening? Okay.
It seems like this is very timely for what's going on in the world.
Yeah, I didn't really plan the timing this way. I didn't know we were going to have a mean, angry presidential debate the week before we do this.
There you go. God did it.
But I hope this does give you a chance to just reflect on, the values that we are being asked to live by as Christians, and where there's a boundary of that it's certainly something that is put on our plate to think about how we are going to make decisions and how we're going to treat other people. But I think it also, this study that we've done tonight really explores to what limit do we place judgment on the other person who doesn't think the same way. It gives us some thought about, or some reason for thought about, what is God calling us to do in those situations? And it's hard. I think it's hard because I want to protect my faith system. I've worked hard to get where I am, to feel comfortable with my relationship with God. And if somebody doesn't agree with it, probably my first response is to say, I hope you enjoy the lonely, dark, hot place you're going to live in for eternity. All right. Well, all right, you all. Well, thanks for participating in all this. And I look forward to session 3 in a week. We're clicking our way through this fast.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, have a great evening. God bless you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thank